Hello, Mel.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Good. How are
Fantastic. Yeah, very good. Enjoying the drum show.
you? Good.
Enjoying it immensely.
And you're here with, is it your grandson?
That's my grandson. Yeah, he's come up with me from London, and he's an aspiring drummer at 9 years of age. So he's following in Granddad's footsteps, hopefully.
Is that, do you give him like lessons, or is it just?
Yeah, I've been giving him a few pointers. I mean, I think with children of any age, you can't push them too hard. They have to want to do it. And if you see the enthusiasm from them wanting to do it, then you can start getting serious with them.
Yeah.
But until they're serious with you, then it really doesn't happen that way.
I guess, opportunities like this, drum shows, and getting that exposure to the drumming community, the drumming world, is probably helping.
Absolutely. I mean, he's fanatical about drums now. I mean, he's been living and breathing this for the last month. So, yeah, it's in his blood.
Amazing. Nice. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yep, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, as well.
Thank you very much, and sorry for the delay.
I guess the best place to start is I wanted to ask you about Simple Minds, of course, and I had a bunch of other topics that I think would be good to cover. Could you just start us off with how the opportunity came about? Was it in 82?
Yeah, basically it was 82, 83, and I was drumming for a session band called Heatwave in the studio in London, and I had an engineer in there called Peter Walsh, who was the producer of Simple Minds at the time, and he said, "Do you fancy to play some drums with this new band called Simple Minds?" And I was like, "Never heard of them, but I'll come along." So I came along, and there was another drummer called Mike Ogletree there at the time, and he was laying the tracks, but they weren't quite happy with his work. So I decided to come in and started to track a few tracks, and they were happy with that. So we progressed further, and after that, laying tracks for that album came out, and again, they weren't happy with the way that Kenny was playing on tour, so they got me to play the tour. So it transpired from then, and I ended up joining the band.
Okay. And did they specify what it was exactly about the playing of the other drummer that they were happy with?
I think they wanted a bit more intensity in his playing. I think he was a bit light for what they needed, a bit too kind of jazzy almost. So they wanted more of a rock element.
Okay.
And I brought the rock element and the kind of funky element because I was playing a lot of funk at the time.
Right.
So that's where that came from.
And did you feel any pressure, like going into that project at all?
Not really, because my whole thing at that time was playing sessions. So, it's going from one studio to another, and, the pressure wasn't really on me to kind of deliver. I had to deliver, and that's what session musicians do.
Yeah.
They please the producer, and you deliver, what's expected of you. So it wasn't really a pressurized situation. I think the more pressurized situation came after, when I decided to join the band, and it wasn't really a pressure, but it was kind of a pressure because, you take on the band formalities and, the band releases and so forth. So, yeah, that was more of a pressure.
And what was that like for you, going from doing largely session work to all of a sudden being in a band?
Different. It was, you had to really mix with other personalities apart from yourself. When I used to go in and do sessions, it was just me who, what do you want? What do you want to hear? So in the band situation, it was, you have to kind of be a part of a group and, and listen to what others were kind of saying in the group.
Yeah. And when you were in the band, was it still a case of like, what do you want to hear, or did you have more liberty to say, I think
in the end, I think on the New Gold Dream album, it was more of a session basis, let's say. But getting into the Sparkle in the Rain album, it was more experimental. So they wanted ideas from what I thought about the tracks and my approach to the tracks. So I was pretty much writing my own parts, and that kind of began at that stage, as it were, which was more of a writing role than a session role.
Was that something that you took to well? Is that something you wanted to lean into?
Yeah, I mean, you know, at that time, even before that, I was always into writing songs and writing compositions. So it was a kind of natural step
Yeah.
to get into that as well in the band.
I mean, so on that point, if we can deviate for a moment from Simple Minds, am I right in saying that you released your first solo album? Was it last year?
That's right.
Yeah. So you started kind of compositional work back then. So my question was, how come there's been such a kind of delay?
Well, I was with the band for a long time, and I think it takes a lot of guts and courage to kind of come out and bring out your own material, and it takes time to write it and to produce it, because I produced it by myself and wrote it by myself. I did have a couple of co-writers on there. One was my brother, and I co-wrote some other material in Germany. But it takes courage to come out with a solo album and to break away from that unit to be in the fore. I mean, you know, examples of that is Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins. You know, they all broke away from Genesis and to come out with solo albums. And yeah, it's a difficult process. It's a difficult process.
What was that shift like for you? All of a sudden, it's your name on the album. You're making a lot of the key kind of artistic and compositional decisions. Was there a specific difference that you felt from that change in role?
Not really. I mean, it was a kind of an extension of Simple Minds and the way I was kind of involved in writing with Simple Minds. So it's a kind of natural progression from that. The only difference is I was singing the material as opposed to Jim singing the material. And that was the only real difference, really. So it's always the kind of composition element was always there, let's say.
So, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned singing, because I was gonna bring that up. Was it Robert Palmer initially that kind of, did he kind of encourage you to sing, or did
He did, yeah. I mean, I played a 2000 tour with Robert, and it was very enlightening in the fact that I was just playing drums with him, not just, but I was playing drums with him, and he said, I know this man can sing, so give him a mic, give him a mic. And I was like, what? So he kind of put the seed in my head to sing. And on one of my releases, he actually came and sang with me, which was a cover of one of his songs, Addicted to Love. And that was quite an honor for him to come and sing with me and to perform with me. So that was great.
And so how did he know you were such a good singer?
I was singing parts at his house. We used to have a few drinks and he heard me singing, and he thought, yeah, you got a good voice. I was like, no, I haven't. No. He said, no, you have. You've got a great voice. So he kind of, pushed me and developed me, let's say.
Incredible.
Yeah.
The next question I was going to ask was to do with the relationship between drumming and singing, because it can be difficult, I guess, for people. But
it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
It's a pat your head and rub your tummy kind of situation. But it's it's something that obviously people like Phil Collins was doing. Don Henley is another example of that. And you have to think about the way you breathe. When you play anyway, you have to think about the way you breathe. But to sing and play, that's a different situation, different scenario. So yeah, you have to think a lot about what you do and how you do it, and it's a matter of bravado, let's say.
Yeah.
It's a matter of courage, to actually do that.
Did you have specific exercises or ways of getting comfortable doing two things at once like that, or did you take to it quite naturally?
I took to it quite naturally, but you have to really think about what you do and the way you perform it, because like I said, singing and playing is not easy. So to actually get, it's more of a physical aspect, because singing is a physical aspect, drumming is a physical aspect. So you have to combine the two. So you have to kind of get that equal balance. But no, it is possible, and I've seen quite a few people do it now. But yeah, it's a challenge, and I love that challenge.
Yeah. Going back to Simple Minds, and how long exactly was that span of time that you spent with Simple Minds?
38 years. So it's quite an innings.
Yeah.
You know, it's up till 2017, I believe,
Yeah.
which is the last album that I did, and yeah, I mean, there's a kind of grey area around what happened in the whole situation, which I'll probably clarify next year, because I'm trying to get together to write a book about it, and so all will be revealed in that scenario. But it wasn't the best of terms, let's say, or the best of terms on my departure, if it was a departure. But I think, you know, the whole thing behind the Simple Minds situation is I think they wanted a change of gear and a change of personality within the band, and that's what transpired, really.
Okay. Okay. And over that span of time, from a drumming point of view, did you feel like you had to always retain that kind of 80s spirit and identity, or did you kind of push yourself to evolve to the ever-changing landscape?
Well, I mean, I like to change, you know, with the ever-evolving landscape, you know, and, you know, things like back in the day, like, well, back in the 90s, let's say early 90s, things like playing with machines, playing with click tracks, you know, I was fine with that, you know, I don't really struggle against that. I think with the whole Simple Minds, the new Simple Minds, let's say, it's all about an image, I think. And, you know, to be quite honest, I mean, my recollection of what's going on now, I mean, they're still playing their hits. They're still playing the hits that I'm played on, you know. I don't think they've come out with any new music. They come out with a few albums, but, you know, I think they have to still play their hits. So it transpires that really everybody wants to hear that 80s sound, you know, and to try and pull away from that, I think is a mistake. And, you know, I think the more 80s, the better, because that's what people want to hear, you know, and you have to give people what they want.
Yeah, yeah. I think that currently there's a lot of nostalgia for that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're a nostalgic band, you know. Simple Minds is an 80s band, and that's what they're known for. So why not give it to the audience?
Yeah. Looking through your list of credits, which is very impressive, one name stood out, and I just wanted to ask your experience working with Elton John on one of his albums. How did that come about, and how was that experience?
That came about through an invitation from Elton John, and he wanted me to play on his album, which I was honoured to do, and it was a great experience because he took his time over his compositions, he took his time over the recording, and it was a kind of laid-back affair. It wasn't really a rushed affair. So we took about, I think, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get everything done. But it was great. I mean, it was a real honour to play with him, real experience to play with him, and yeah, it was great. Great album. I really enjoyed it.
And did he come to the table already with kind of clear ideas on what he wanted for the drumming, or did he leave that to you?
He kind of left it to me, but you know, he had a clear idea about the composition. So you know, I think really, if you tune in as a musician to the composition, and you give the producer and the artist what they want, I think that's the main thing. I think if you go in there with too many expectations about what you should be doing, I think that's the wrong approach. I think if you put your hands in the producer's hands, and you know, what do you want? What do you want me to play, kind of thing. You know, obviously you have ideas to put across, but you know, it's down to really the producer to give you the script about what the composition's about.
Yeah. So you've done extensive session work. You've been kind of a fixed part of a band, and now you've done your solo stuff. Looking ahead, is there something you wanna focus your efforts on? I mean, you mentioned the book. Musically, is there a project that you're paying attention to?
I think musically, you know, I think I want to continue along obviously the solo situation. I've put a band together which is called the Marquee Club All-Star Band, and that's pretty much taking songs that a lot of the bands that play at the Marquee, taking their songs and putting a band around that which could not so much as a tribute band, but a tribute to the club and a tribute to the songs, but done in a band, a new band sort of setting.
Right.
So it's not really, you know, just playing the songs for playing the songs. We put our mark on those songs as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a great band, and I feel very, 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 very excited about that project because it's, you know, it's all the songs that I love playing, but you know, in our version.
Nice. Could you give us some of your favourite tunes that you play with that?
Yeah, we play a whole lot of love, Moby Dick. Won't Get Fooled Again, School's Out. You know, there's a plethora of great songs coming from that era and coming from those bands.
Incredible. And out of curiosity, how do you? So you said it's not kind of like a straight cover. It's maybe like a reinterpretation slightly. How do you approach the original John Bonham drum parts for those?
Well, you approach it like Bonzo. You know, I'm a huge Bonzo fan, so it's kind of in my blood to play that in that vein. But John Bonham was a kind of incredible player. I mean, he was. You know, there's been a lot of debate and speculation that he actually took a lot from Carmona Piche, which is kind of debatable. But you know, he was a great player, he was an innovator, and he inspired me a lot, hell of a lot to play. Just his sound, his approach to playing, and one thing which is kind of strange. That somebody actually noted the other day was that there's certain drummers that kind of sit on the beat, and there's certain drummers that sit behind the beat, and John Bonham's one of them. You know, he has this kind of lazy feel. He's still on it, but he has this lazy feel. Same with Jeff Porcaro. Jeff Porcaro's got that kind of laid back thing as well. You know, and I kind of aspire to that.
Yeah.
You know, and I love to kind of generate that kind of pullback sensation when I play, you know, and that's I guess that's a trademark of what I do.
Yeah, and I feel like that's always one of the things that's really difficult to teach and learn.
Yeah,
feels like, you know,
it's a feeling.
Yeah,
it's a feeling. Yeah,
yeah.
And you know, even you know, if you listen to Buddy Rich as well. Obviously, he's got blinding speed, blinding technique, but he actually holds back. If you listen to the way he approaches his playing, he's actually playing slightly behind, you know, and that's what gives that high, that gives that tension, and it gives that kind of flair, you know, and that's what I love about seeing drummers like that, you know, because it's. You know, it's what you hold back. It's what you take out of the equation, and that's what the whole essence is.
Yeah.
You know, another example of that is a guy called Phil Rudd. You know, and I got to see AC/DC quite recently. Well, not recently, but I think it was last year, or was it the year before? And I miss Phil Rudd. He had this certain groove that when he played, it's unbelievable, and nobody else plays like him.
You mentioned Bonham was a big influence on you. Is there anyone else you'd kind of put in that top bracket of big influences?
I'd say Billy Cobham, definitely. He was in that bracket. Narada Michael Walden, Tony Williams, Steve Gadd. Steve Gadd, again, has got that kind of approach, you know, to his playing. So, you know, there's many top drummers out there who influence me.
Yeah. I'll try and pick up two threads here because we just you listed some really great drummers, and earlier we were talking about this appetite for nostalgia these days. Are there any contemporary modern drummers that catch your eye these days?
Yeah, many. Yeah, I mean, there's many. Uh, uh, there's a new drummer out. Well, new in the last couple of years. Is it George Boroli?
Mm.
Incredible drummer,
Mm.
unbelievable drummer, incredible chops. But he has he has the right pocket and the right groove. Um, you know, people like Keith Carlock as well. Even though he's not, he's not a new drummer, but he's come to the fore in the last 5 years. But again, there's many of them out there, which are great drummers. But I think, I think the great drummers, in my opinion, listen. They don't just play. I mean, for instance, Vinny. Vinny can sit on a pattern for ages and not play a fill. That's the mark of a great drummer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about technique. It's about the feeling, So when you do actually play a fill, or when you do something tasty, it means something.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question I was going to say, your credit list is, if I could kind of, in a sort of fictional way, if there's one artist that you really wish you could have worked with, is there someone at the top of your list that you think, I wish I just had one session with them?
Yeah, I'd say probably, I'd love to work with Chaka Khan. I'd love to work with Earth, Wind and Fire. Tower of Power. The kind of more obscure, maybe the more obscure artists. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge jazz head. I'm a huge funk head. I'm a huge rock head. So, all these things combine. It's a kind of melting pot out there. So, there's many. Rush, another one. I believe Annika Niles has just got the Rush gig.
Yeah.
And congratulations to her, because she's great. She deserves it. And all these iconic bands, it would be great to play with. But it's great to have diversity in music. I could hear a pop song on the radio and think, yeah, I'd love to have played with that. Or it's music, and. To me, playing drums is like I say, is a feeling, and it's something where you're heartfelt about playing with. So there's many artists I'd love to play with, love to have played with, but I've got to play with quite a few.
Yeah, and I think what you said is about how you're a jazz head, you're a rock head, you've covered all the bases basically, and what's beautiful then is that you can hear that in your playing, that there are all these influences and these layers and textures, which for me at least makes your playing so interesting.
Thank you.
I wanted to open up to the people if there are any questions you wanted to ask Mel.
Yeah.
I play in a band where I'm in Devon, and hands down the best song that we play as part of our repertoire is "Don't You Forget About Me."
Mm-hmm.
That I just take so much of your ideas on that, and it just bounces along perfectly. Can you talk about how you put the part together and your contribution to the writing process, and maybe how life changed after that came out?
Well, life did change because we had a kind of multiple number ones with that, but that track got together really. We heard the track as a demo, which Keith Forsey presented to us, and when he was playing the track, I mean, he played it a couple of times, and I thought, it's good, but it needs something else. It needs something special. And we kind of went in and jammed it. I mean, that was probably 2 takes. And we come out with the track. Even that breakdown was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, it's just that Jim didn't have any words for the breakdown. That's why he sang La La La.
That space, and when the snare comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I had to bring it in with the feel, so that was the feel I brought it in with. And a lot of people.
I know, you're waiting for that bit in the whole song. It's just perfect.
Thank you.
Really
I mean, it was like I said, it was basically a jam, So I brought it down, and it was a feel to come back into the kind of outro. So that is a kind of, like you say, a special time or a special feeling, I guess. But that was pretty much a jam as we went in, and we just cut it. we cut it, as a second take, I believe.
Still be there now.
Sorry?
You should still be there now.
I should still.
You should still be there. Still be there.
Well, it's just. Yeah, I think I think she's doing a good job, and
all your licks now.
yeah, I mean she's taken some of them, I guess, but I think good on her if she can make it work for that situation. But yes, there is like you said a backlash of what went on, but all will be revealed.
No.
I would say. Yeah.
If you were to get one chance to play one Simple Minds song live for the last time, which one would you choose?
Good question. I'd say probably, because I was listening to it the other day, it's White Hot Day, and that is a unique piece of music, and I was like, did I really do that? That's really weird. And no, it's a great piece of music, and a lot of stuff on Sparkle in the Rain was really experimental, but it kind of worked, Even like Waterfront, I mean, that was like bombastic, but, it kind of worked for that era. And yeah, I mean, pretty much the whole of Sparkle in the Rain, I'd love to do live again.
If I could choose one, it'd be Book of Brilliant Things.
Oh, yeah. Which version?
The one you did at the Ahoy.
Okay.
Okay. It was on the tune.
Yeah.
My brother and I had that recorded on a VHS cassette, and we watched that so often.
You wore it out.
It was strange.
Yeah, I've done that with quite a few tapes
One little
myself.
bit where you hit the three cymbals and they stopped the video part way through, and that took about 1.5 times as long as it should. Well. Yeah, I mean, there were good times, I mean, a lot of stuff with the band was just unique, I guess. And we went through a lot of changes, and it kind of worked. And one thing which really shouldn't have happened is that Mick McNeil left. That was a kind of a real big turning point. And certainly if he got back in the band, I'll jump at that chance to be in that, because he was a genius, coming out with all those parts and melodies, and unbelievable. And alongside Derek Forbes. Yeah.
I mean, that whole unit was just a force to be reckoned with, I guess. And it was really, Simple Minds was never a pop band, really. Simple Minds was a kind of experimental band, which happened to fall into the pop element. So, it was great to be a part of that. It really was.
Have to include yourself in that as well. You're part of it.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, Yeah, it was fun times, and like I said, experimental times, and it's a shame that it's gone away from that. Now it's a shame that, because we had a lot of instrumental songs as well, instrumental tracks, which were just incredible, incredible.
How long would it take you to come up with a drum part if somebody, Jim or whoever, gave you the song and said, "Here you go, Mel. What do you reckon to this?"
I don't think it'd take me long.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't take me long. Because I think in that way that, because I'm a songwriter as well, I can think about what the melody's doing, what the chordal progression's doing. So, to come up with drum parts to fit certain things which are unusual and not just run of the mill, I think, I love to do that.
When you're just doing regular sessions for anybody, and you're in the studio and you hear that song, some people use Nashville numbers, some people have their own kind of version of that, some people write it out musically. How many passes would it take you, and what system do you use to write a song out so that you can just then go and smash it?
Well, usually, I mean, it depends on the session. I mean, usually I'll get the tracks a while before, so I can probably study them, but I'm probably known as the one-take wonder, because I can go in there and listen to a song and nail it. And usually, I mean, it will take probably one take. If the
the producer's not happy with it, we do it again. But usually I can nail it in one take. I'm pretty confident to do that.
Did you use many overdubs, or was it when you not really?
It depends on the session. Depends on what the criteria is for the producer. If the producer hears, you know, tom-tom overdubs, cymbal overdubs, whatever, then it can be done. I think one of the hardest sessions I've ever done was with this guy called Rod Temperton, who wrote all the Michael Jackson stuff. He actually wrote a lot of stuff for Heatwave, which is his band, and he had me go into the studio and this is before click tracks, put my own click down to play to, and then overdub single drums to the track. So it was a bass drum first, snare drum, hi-hats overdubs, tom-tom overdubs, cymbal overdubs. Took for ages, but you know we glued it together, and that was on the Heatwave album. So that's probably one of the hardest examples I've ever had of that.
Just got one more question. Sorry, I'm asking another one. How come? What happened with the Next World album? How come Shulman played on that and you didn't? Because you were in your heyday with the Minds Partner.
Yeah, I mean that was a kind of weird scenario. I think they went to the States. I kind of backed off from street fighting years because there was some, let's say, funny atmospheres going on in the band. So, and that was after. No, sorry. So we done street fighting years, and then we done Real Life. Then after Real Life, that was a kind of strange time in the band. And then they decided to go to America and record out in America, so which involved a new producer who had his own drummer. Yeah, so he used Mark Shulman for that. And yeah, I mean, it was an interesting record, but I don't think it was that well received, really. I mean, in the States it probably was, but it
It's
wasn't.
not on Apple. You can't get it, download it on Apple Music.
Oh, you can't?
No, it's
Oh,
not on the catalog.
okay. Well, there you
Tells
go.
you- tells you-
Yeah, it tells you something, yeah.
Maybe that's the mark of your status in the band. I mean,
Possibly, yeah.
you're seriously well known, and I think just sort of average Joe punters would know you as the drummer, but not just the drummer, like a real integral player. Part of the
Okay.
group, you know.
Yeah.
I love the way you talk about, like, you know, the sort of the session attitude, and you're a real musicians kind of are, not just 2 and 4 playing backwards and forwards, a real compositional approach. Can you talk a little about that?
Well, I mean, the compositional approach, it comes from, like I said, writing songs and you know, producing songs and arranging songs. But it really, I think if you listen to something which is, let's say, bog standard, you're going to get a bog standard part. But if you listen to something which is, you know, off the grid, let's say, you know, you can kind of mold things into the way that you're thinking without it being too overwhelming, if that makes sense. And I think the compositional element really helps with that. It really does. Does that answer your question?
It does,
Yeah.
because I mean, I heard so many players today, but the ones who compose and don't just think of drum kit, cymbals, drums, they're thinking of, like, what's the mood, what's the lyricist doing, what's the idea.
Do you know another real integral part, and I just really checked him out really recently, is a guy called, is it Terry Chambers? For XTC. Now, if you listen to, for instance, Making Plans for Nigel, I mean, who would come out of the park like that? I mean, that is unbelievable. It's, you know, and you know, for a player to come out with that part, and it's just like, wow, you know. How would you play that? How would you think about playing that, you know? It's the same with Stuart Copeland, you know, some of his parts that he played with in The Police, you know, is, you know, you check it out with the vocal. I mean, it's Keith Moon's another example of that. You know, it's weird, you know, how drummers or how musicians think about, you know, what the song is and what the compositional element is. It's pretty intense.
I was going to ask you, Mel, and some of it's coming out actually as you speak, about general composition when tracks were being laid out together. Would you say across your career there's been a general theme in terms of who brings what to the party in terms of developing a song? Would you say you led it, or other people led it? Would you say they brought the vocal first, or the tune first? And then from that, when you were actually playing at the level that somebody as esteemed as yourself was playing, what did you take as main cues when you were playing across the mix? And was it the same throughout? Did it vary across different tracks?
That's a good question, actually.
I'm thinking of live work that I'm doing myself, which is at nothing like the level that you've been at. But I find myself in different situations where I'm taking cues off different parts of the song that they don't think I would be using, you know. So when you're trying to get a mix right, what have you, you know, this traditional thinking that drummers and bass players always sort of gel together, and I think in some way, I mean, we're all individual, but I don't cue off that.
What do you cue off then?
I often cue off the vocal, mainly, in terms of, but again, it sort of varies, and so yeah, sorry, I'm doing.
No, that's a really good. That's a really good question. I mean, what I was cueing off in Simple Minds actually was the keyboards, because Mick McNeil played such an integral part of the melody, so I was cueing off the melody of Mick on a lot of my stuff, on a lot of the stuff that I was playing. And a huge example of that was on Once Upon a Time, the album Once Upon a Time, you know, and his keyboard playing on that was just so elaborate, but it was clear to me that was the melody. That was the melody of the whole record, you know, was the keyboards. And so much so, when it comes to mixing, you know, the drums are really high in the mix. So I think it was actually Jim, he said to the producer, he said, well, why are the drums so high in the mix? He said, because I like it, you know, this is Bob Clearmountain, you know. So he's like saying, he's basically telling him to, you know, get lost. And, you know.
When you were recording, was there a set piece in terms of which instrument was laid down first, or whether it was done live? Or?
Well, I mean, a lot of the time, let's say for instance, in Sparkle in the Rain, in Once Upon a Time, the drums were a big part. And that came out in the production, and the producers, for some reason, you know, liked what I was doing. So they wanted to feature that. And I don't think that went down. They probably didn't tell me to my face, but it didn't go down that well with the rest of the band, because the limelight was kind of on me, on what was going on, which I thought was strange at the time, because drummers really didn't get that limelight apart from, I don't know, Toto, Phil Collins. So it was kind of weird that, you know, the drums got the limelight. But yeah, to answer your question, it was really the keyboards that I was listening to. And I was like, yeah, I'm vibing on the keyboards. You know, it's just huge sound, playing intricate, you know, melody parts all over the place. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I was smiling when you mentioned Chaka Khan, but a friend of mine who did play for
Who was that?
Chris Bain.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
From Sheffield.
Yeah.
He's in the US now.
Yeah, I know Chris is in the US, yeah.
Some time,
I didn't realise he played with Chaka Khan, yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. But no, that was one lady, because Steve Ferroni done some great stuff on the Chaka Khan albums. And one of my all-time favourite bass players was on that as well. And yeah, I mean, no, great albums, really great.
What kit did you use on Once Upon a Time?
Once Upon a Time, that was a Premier kit I used on that, because I was endorsed by Premier at the time.
and it was actually Bob Clearmountain's Black Beauty that I used for the snare, and that was a fantastic snare. I tried to nick it. I tried to sneak it in my case, and he was like, "Where's my snare drum?" And I was like, "Oh, I've never seen it. I didn't see it. What snare drum? What is this?"
Certainly brilliant. And
Thank you.
Say Lexi's more the feel on that album. I thought was brilliant.
Do you know one thing as well? I mean, a lot of people ask about the snare drum on Don't You. That snare drum was actually a Premier 14 by 5 inch copper snare that I used. Copper snare, yeah, I used. No, it wasn't copper. It was copper. Or was it brass? No, it was a brass. 14 by 5 brass. Sure, I used it on that. And it had the room that we recorded that in, which was a place called CTI Studios in Wembley, which is an old film studios. I mean, the room in there was just unbelievable sound. So, that's where I got that crack from.
That was one of my questions actually about snare sounds. Very technical question, but you have a distinct snare sound for me. And you just kind of answered it actually.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that it's probably in the technique of how you play.
Well, you're hitting the rims, aren't you, normally as well? So
Kind of, yeah, I'm hitting the rims. In fact, it was kind of funny last night because my grandson was at a gig that I'd done last night, and he's actually got the stick. And it was I use these carbon fibre sticks which never break, and I broke a stick last night. And he brought it with him. It's like, Grandad, we have to take that and show the man from the stick company because that's not right. But I think the reason I know what the reason is for breaking that stick is because I've got a wonderful snare drum which is an alloy snare drum, 14 by 6 alloy snare, but it's got a die-cast soup in it. So when you hit that, it's just, it's all over, So, but, yeah. I mean, I guess I've got a unique snare drum sound.
you have, yeah. Famous for breaking sticks and cymbals as well.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, at one point, when I was with Pearl, don't tell them, but I actually broke a snare drum. I actually cracked the actual shell.
Wow.
Of the snare drum. Because I was a bit crazy in those days. I think at one point I was going through. Well, the sticks were obviously wooden sticks in those days, but I was going through about 5 to 6 pairs a night, and I'd go through pretty much a set of heads a night as well. So the full-time roadie job. He had a stack of heads that he had to change. And once I actually went through a bass drum head, which is really strange. I mean, it went straight through and he panicked. I just saw his face. So he had another bass drum, so he pulled out the bass drum and I was still playing and put another bass drum in. So, incredible technician. I mean, incredible. So, yeah, those sort of things. Cymbals as well. Yeah, cracking cymbals was another thing. I guess depends on the angle you have a cymbal. If you have a cymbal which is straight on, you're going to crack it because you're going to hit the side of the cymbal and it's going to be all over. But if you tilt them like this is, I think it gives a cymbal a chance. I think I think really realistically, I mean, I do actually play loud, but I think I'm not as crazy as I was because I think technique can give you that. And I was actually speaking to Billy Cobham about that. Everything's in the technique, everything's in the way you hit a drum or hit a cymbal. But he used to go through a lot because he used to be an animal. Well, he still is a great, incredible drummer, but he used to really play heavy and loud. And I think he woke up. He said he woke up one day and he said, "Why am I playing so loud? You should let the stick do the work." And that's one great thing about these sticks that I'm playing. You can get, the stick will do the work. You don't really have to hit that hard to get that response or that power.
Just one quick one. Did you take formal lessons or was it from record?
Do you know something? I didn't take formal lessons, but I actually took some lessons for 1 year with a guy called Brian Spring. It was quite a famous jazz drummer in London, and he wouldn't even let me go near a kit, let alone a snare drum. until I had my 27 rudiments down. You know, he was a real ball breaker. So, you know, he was, I used to go to lessons and it was in a really dark and dingy garage and it was just a snare drum there on the stool. And I was thinking, you know, where's the rest of the kit? He said, no, you learn your rudiments, you know. He was an incredible drummer, absolutely incredible drummer. So that was.
Encourage that approach to learning drums now.
I would say I would encourage the learning capabilities of learning your technique and learning your rudiments. But the basic thing which I was teaching a pupil the other day, and to be honest, he couldn't really hold a stick properly. And I thought that was really weird. And he's had lessons before, but nobody told him or explained to him how to hold a stick in the correct way. So it was like he was mixing porridge or mixing a cake or something. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, hold the stick properly. You know, that's the fundamentals of you know, teaching somebody, and then going on to the next step of, you know, rudiments before you even get to the kit, because you know you're not going to know what you're going to do unless you have a knowledge of what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So.
Can you remember any individual gigs that you did when you were simple?
Individual gigs?
Any actual individual gigs?
How long have you got?
I just remember burning out live in the City of Light when I was in our youth as well.
Yeah, I mean, Live in the City of Light came from basically 3 gigs, 3 separate gigs or 3 separate tours. Or it was 3 separate tours. So we recorded part in Australia, we recorded part in Switzerland, and another part was the Ahoy. So that was taken from 3.
So was the album a homage of?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, that was a great album. I mean, that was an album I was really, really proud of because it sounded so good. For a live album, it sounded incredible, you know, and they've come out with a live album, but I've never heard it pretty recently. But I think it was along the lines of Live in the City of Light, but I don't know, I haven't heard it, so I can't really remark on it, but that album I was particularly proud of, yeah. And also the live gigs that we done in Verona as well, the amphitheatre, that was pretty on the Street Fighting Years tour, that was pretty monumental. I mean, that was great. I really enjoyed playing those set of gigs. You know, pretty much all the tours that we done were great, really. But to pull out certain gigs, I think we'll be here all day.
Great.
Thank you so much, Mel, for your time. For your
Thank you very
stories,
much.
being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks for everybody coming. Really, thank you very much.